An ordinary afternoon in Gulf Breeze, Florida. On this quiet suburban street, a married couple are arguing, as couples often do. But for these two, today, it's different.
What I said.
What was that?
You just shot me.
She just shot him. I just heard 4 shots.
The local police department received 3 911 calls from the Turner's house on September 8th, 2021. This was the last call. When somebody calls the emergency services, it's clear they're in trouble, but rarely does the call capture a crime being committed. Here, the sound of gunshots were exactly what they seemed to be. The sound of 34-year-old Colin James Turner being murdered. When the police got to the scene, they found Colin's wife, 34-year-old Bree Coon. She was the only adult in the house, and it was clear she'd had something to do with it. But why? What had led her to the point of mercilessly executing her husband while he was on the phone to the police? A troubled relationship, kids caught in the middle, and a he-said-she-said situation that ended in murder. It should have been a fairy tale marriage. But here, on the decoder, things don't often work out that way. This is the tragic story of Bree Coon and Colin Turner. Gulf Breeze is a quiet, picturesque place in the Pensacola area of Florida. It's coastal, an ideal destination for vacation or retirement, and known for its excellent schools, beaches, and good education. What more could a family ask for? Some families bring their strife with them. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, towards the end of the summer season, when a police patrol car was called to a quiet suburban street. This was not the first call they'd received from this residence that afternoon, but this one was fatal.
Anybody else in there? Can we open this?
The police had to climb underneath the door to enter Colin Turner's garage, which had now become a crime scene. Inside, they found Colin lying dead on the floor, covered in blood.
I don't know who he is, but he's in the garage. 3 in the chest, or looks like 3 in the chest, might be 2. They said they heard 4 gunshots though.
On the 911 call, 4 shots had rung out, and then Colin had fallen silent.
Sorry, there. He's not answering.
This was why the police had hastened to the scene, because the 911 operator believed she'd listened to a murder in real time. And with Colin dead on the floor of his own garage, it seemed she'd been right. The police spread out and searched the property. In particular, they were searching for the murder weapon. They found a gun in the kitchen.
It looks like it's in the holster.
Yeah.
But it's stuck behind the toaster.
Set behind a toaster.
This was an act of violence committed at the heart of the domestic space. The gun was hidden in the kitchen, the victim was locked in the garage, and the kids were just across the street. They'd been in the house when their father was murdered. When the police got to the scene, those 3 kids were present. 2 were Colin and Bree's children, aged 4 and 3, while the third was Bree's 12-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. The cops found Bree sitting with the daughter on a neighbor's porch, talking to her about what had happened.
She told her that everything would be fine and that she was sorry. And when I spoke to her, I asked her if she was all right. And she said that I shot him.
Within minutes of the shooting, with her daughter right there, Bree confessed. She said she'd been the one to shoot her husband.
She told me that she shot him because he was going to take that she shot him because he was going to take my children.
Bree seemed to be in a state of shock.
Are you in shock?
Well, do me a favor. Can you,
Is he alive?
they're working on him right now.
Okay.
She didn't seem to realize that she'd killed Colin, not at first, but the horrific reality sank in as the police were patting her down.
He was dead. I saw him and I tried to help, but he was dead.
Okay, well, let's not talk about that right now, okay?
My kids don't have a dad or a mom now. And it's my fault. And he's right? I'm a murderer.
So you listen, you're not listening to me. You're not under arrest right now. You're being detained. Okay? We'll investigate.
No, you should arrest me. I killed my husband.
Bree's mood was going up and down. From being convinced Colin was dead, she then suggested that maybe he wasn't.
Hopefully I just shot him. Maybe he's not dead. He should not be dead. How come they're not going to get him? The ambulance.
The ambulance wasn't going to get Colin because Colin was dead at his wife's hand, and she seemed full of regret. She knew what she'd done, and she knew it wasn't right. So why had she done it? How had this ordinary afternoon turned so tragic and ended so fatally? Bree Kuhn was born in May 1987. She graduated East Mississippi Community College in 2012 at the age of 25, and she joined the Navy. This was where she met Colin Turner from Georgia. Colin was the same age as Bree and served in the United States Marine Corps for 14 years, rising to the level of gunnery sergeant before leaving on a medical discharge due to a traumatic brain injury. He became a stay-at-home dad to his and Bree's children. Bree remained in the Navy, serving as a leading petty officer at Naval Air Station Pensacola. This could have left Colin at a loose end, resenting his wife's achievements while he looked after the kids. But instead, he kept himself busy with further education, studying for a degree in electrical engineering online. He'd been accepted into a master's program at Johns Hopkins University and listed it on his Facebook profile that he'd start studying there in January 2022. Tragically, that day would never arrive. Not much is known about what drew these two together, or what they had in common other than the Navy. Both had children from previous relationships, but they were committed to building a life together, with their first child born in 2017, and their second in 2018. But recently, their relationship seemed to have taken a turn for the worse. Colin had recently tagged Bree in a Facebook meme that said, "Fun fact, the majority of archaeologists are women due to their natural ability to dig up the past." Bree herself had been using Facebook to ask for advice about divorce attorneys. She apparently wrote, "It will likely be an ugly, contested one that involves children and property." Something had gone seriously wrong between this loving couple. So wrong that their relationship ended in murder. On September 8th, the police were called 3 times. Both the first and second time they failed to prevent the most tragic of outcomes, until they were arriving on the scene to find the man they'd spoken to dead on the floor. The first 911 call was at 12:53 p.m. Colin and Bree had got into a heated argument, and it was Bree who called the cops.
She's got a shotgun and her pistol in the bedroom with her.
Okay.
And my pistol is on the dashboard of my truck.
Bree accused Colin of getting violent with her.
What's going on today, ma'am?
So my husband is trying to take the kids.
What's up, big guy?
He threw me on the floor and pushed me against the wall.
And this all happened today?
Yes, it happened. We've
What
been
the-
having issues over since the weekend.
What are the issues about?
Just typical relationship stuff. His go-to is to use the kids against me. So
Yes.
he's trying to take them to Georgia. And I don't want them to go.
As the officer was talking to her, the kids kept interrupting, wanting to show him things. They didn't seem to have a sense of the danger brewing above their heads, or maybe they were just used to it. Maybe this was how an average day went in Bree and Colin's household, with the threat of aggression constantly present.
I have appointments with attorneys. I don't want him in the house. He was over the weekend. I just want
You
him
got
divorced.
any marks anywhere? You got any bruises or anything?
No.
The problem is I got to be able to prove it.
Bree wanted the police to remove her husband from the house. She said that he'd attacked her, but she didn't have any physical evidence. And the officers told her that her word alone wasn't enough.
We're not going to get involved with you guys taking the kids or separating the kids or saying that this parent or that parent can take the children. That's
Okay.
not unless there's a protection order or a domestic violence injunction or something from a court. If you want, I'll get you a statement and get you started on that. Fill it out. Tell me what happened today.
I don't want to get the kids and get out of here and I can fill them out. at another time.
The officer ordered to take a full statement from Bree, which would be the first step in the process of getting some kind of court order against Colin, if what she said was true. But she refused. She said maybe she'd do it at a later date, because her priority was her children. The police then talked to Colin.
Was at any point in time did it get physical? I told you I tried to grab my daughter last night, and she got physical and stopped me. So I backed up off at that point. That kind of allegation is the last thing I need.
Bree appeared, looking for bags to pack his things, maybe hoping to make him leave. The couple continued to argue.
Not leaving the kids with me. Borderline rage last night, and it's continuing to now. I figured out I was trying to take my kids. Give space between the two of us, not take the fucking kids away from her.
I got you.
I'm the primary caretaker of the kids, only caretaker of the kids.
Colin told a very different story. He said that Bree was unstable and that he was planning to take the kids to his parents' place in Georgia only to get a break from her for a little while so they could all calm down.
So nobody pushing anybody, nobody trying to hit anybody. Any reason why she would say maybe that you did bad at her?
She has borderline personality disorder, and it's a textbook thing for people with that disorder to do is make false allegations.
Bree did have a history of mental health issues. At the time of September 8th, she was on active duty in the Navy, but in the past she'd been on limited duty due to a suicide attempt. This had resulted in a Baker Act proceeding for her to receive treatment. She was on medication and attended therapy sessions. Around the time of the shooting, according to her superior, she'd missed some of these sessions and had been skipping work. These were signs that she'd been acting erratically, and Colin was adamant that he was trying to de-escalate the situation. He made a statement to this effect and signed it. Whatever the truth, the police weren't getting involved.
We can't stop you from doing anything. Y'all are married. So we can stop you from being violent with each other.
The officers couldn't have known how ironic these words were. They left Colin and Bree to it. But at 5 p.m., there came another call. This time, it was Colin calling. He said the same thing, that they were having an argument that was getting heated.
Hey, my wife won't let me in my house. She's got mental health stuff going on. I was trying to leave for Georgia to get a break from her for me and the kids earlier today, and then she called you guys. And I was talking to you guys. She took my photo ID, all my access to money and everything, and then took the kids inside and locked me up.
This wasn't just an argument. Now it seemed Bree was messing with Colin's property.
She was mad that I turned off the Wi-Fi last night, so she washed my laptop in the dishwasher. And that's kind of like the last straw.
She locked him outside the house right after the police left the first time. When the officers spoke to Bree again, she repeated what she'd said earlier, that Colin had been physically abusive towards her and was trying to take her kids away. She said he'd gone over her head to speak to her superiors in the Navy.
He had been in contact with my command. There's allegations of emotional abuse.
At about 2 p.m. that day, after the first 911 call, Colin had called her superiors.
He said that Bree had removed their access to the financial information, as well as he put his computer through the dishwasher. It was just a very general, casual conversation like we're having now. It wasn't escalated or anything. It wasn't any holler or screaming. It seemed very reasonable to me. When we look at a couple of things here, we call it spousal emotional abuse. The Navy says when you remove financial capabilities or you start causing damage to people's equipment or stuff, it's a form of emotional abuse.
The Navy defined what she'd done as emotional abuse. Bree's commanders asked Colin if he felt safe at home with Bree. He said he did. Then they called Bree to talk about the situation, and she said Colin was lying. They also asked her the same questions they'd asked Colin.
I asked her if she felt safe inside the residence. She said for her and her kids, and she stated she did.
But Bree was telling a different story to the police. She accused Colin of using her daughter to manipulate her, and she repeated that Colin had attacked her. But because she had no evidence, there was nothing the police could do.
If it turns physical at any point, somebody's going to have to go jail. Okay? State law requires somebody to go to jail. If somebody gets physical and there's an evidence of it, somebody's going to jail. Okay, whether it's you, whether it's her, I don't know.
They were right. Somebody was going to jail, but somebody else would have to die first. The police left for what they hoped would be the final time thinking that Colin and Bree would reconcile their differences for the sake of the kids. They couldn't have been more. Just an hour later, at 6:22 p.m., Colin called 911 again. But this time, something was different.
Hi, you guys have been out to my house twice today, and then most recently, the deputy talked to my wife and let me in the house, and then she locked me in the garage, and I tried to break my arm, and I was trying to get back inside. She locked the door behind me. And what I tried to do.
A day of escalating domestic arguments had culminated in a fatal shooting. The autopsy report confirmed that he was shot in the back, what appeared to be an unprovoked attack.
Is there any doubt in your mind whatsoever the wounds in Mr. Turner's back are entrance wounds?
I have no doubt whatsoever.
Though Bree said it was Colin who was manipulating and abusing her, she locked him in the garage so he had to escape when she came at him with her gun. The police already knew who'd killed Colin, but to get to the bottom of why, they took Bree in for an interview.
I talked to a lot of people tonight. Okay. I feel like your voice is the most important. I want to give you the opportunity to kind of explain or maybe give us a little bit of insight exactly what happened tonight.
Bree went over the day's 3 911 calls, repeating that the arguments had been over the children.
He said that sometime I tried to kill myself. A couple months ago that a judge pulled over and gave me custody of children. He threw me on the ground and said nobody would believe me because I was a crazy bitch.
But the police knew all this already. What they wanted to know was what had happened next.
So what happened after the law enforcement left the second time?
I don't remember. He was in the garage again, and I locked him out. He tried coming in, so I blocked the door, and he kicked my foot. And was trying to push to go to the door to get my kids. And I took him out of the house, around back, to go to the neighbor's house, and I saw a kid to go 911. And to take the kids so I could go back and help him because I shot him.
Bree painted a confused picture. Somewhere in the middle of this altercation, she'd shot her husband, and she knew what she'd done because she took the kids out of the house, knowing that they shouldn't be around. But by then, it was too late.
How many times did you shoot him, Bree? Sure. So just to kind of...
I didn't mean to shoot him. It was at least twice I didn't mean to shoot him, but I did. And he said something, and just the look on his face.
What was the look on his face?
He was gonna kill me.
Bree implied that it had been in self-defense, but the investigators questioned this.
Where did you get the gun? And you said you came to the door. Did you already have the gun in your hands? You already had the gun in your hand when you came to the garage door?
She couldn't answer this question, nor could she explain what Colin had been doing when she came to the garage with the gun in her hand. She didn't say he was holding a weapon or anything that could threaten her. The investigators already knew that he'd been on the phone to 911. All he was holding was his cell phone. They left her alone while she called her dad.
I mean, I gotta believe there was a reason it happened. Typically don't go around shooting people without a reason. Threatening you, or in the middle of an argument? Eric seemed to think he sounded like Colin was mocking you at the time. But I don't know.
Eric was Bree's brother. Her family was trying to piece together reasons why she could have done this. It wasn't immediately obvious.
This is so uncharacteristic. Why did you go for it? Why did you have a gun? Was he gonna hurt you?
I don't know.
What's that?
I don't know.
Unlike what she told the police investigators, that she felt like Colin was going to kill her, she admitted to her father that she didn't know, and she felt horribly guilty about it.
You really killed my best friend.
You did.
My husband, father of my kids. I just fucked up everybody. I killed him. It's fucked up everybody else's life.
So, was this self-defense or murder? This was a matter for the jury to decide. Bree Kuhn was brought to trial in September 2024. Alongside all the body camera footage and the recorded police interview, there were also shown pieces of evidence from Bree and Colin's phones in the time leading up to the killing. This included a cell phone video recorded by Bree right before the first 911 call.
So this is a back and forth thing. This is really what you want to do in front of the kids.
I want you to leave the house, or I can take.
I want you to leave the house.
I don't want to be happy with it at all.
Okay, then leave.
I don't trust you with the kids.
I don't trust you with the kids. You're on disability for being emotionally unstable.
Or for drug pain.
Colin had suffered a traumatic brain injury a few years back, the reason for his discharge from the Marines, which Bree's defense pointed to as a cause for irrational, unstable behavior. But with both parties having medical problems that potentially affected their judgment, this argument didn't hold sway. Bree's former partner, the father of her 12-year-old daughter, also testified. He'd received text messages from Colin at 12:55 p.m. on the day Colin was killed, right around the time Bree was recording the cell phone video. Colin said,
"Hey man, Bree's losing it. She ran my laptop through the dishwasher last night because I turned the Wi-Fi off. I'm planning on getting out of here with the little kids, but she's already told me she'll press charges if I take Kylie with me. I don't know what you can do legally, but I wanted to give you a heads up."
When Bree's ex responded with sympathy, Colin told him that Bree was on a downward trajectory, making bad choices. The ex replied at 6:09 p.m., just 13 minutes before the shooting. Colin said,
"It's gonna be worse before it gets better too. She's always told her stories about you, and I thought you sucked, but now that I think about it, she's crazy as hell and probably did the same stuff to you."
Bree's ex talked to her current husband in real time as Colin was locked in the garage, and then never responded again. But after the shooting, Bree called her ex and told him he needed to come and get their daughter.
I said, "Why do I need to come get my daughter?" And she said, "I just shot Colin." And I responded, I said, "Why?" And she said, I don't know."
Bree's actions towards her husband had been escalating. She'd cut him off from his finances, meaning he'd had to seek the Navy's support, and just the previous night, she'd destroyed his laptop. Locking him in the garage, no way out, was the latest in a long string of irrational behavior. But as his shock on the 911 call conveys, he couldn't have expected her to kill him. Bree originally planned to testify at her trial, alongside an expert witness who would tell the jury that Bree suffered from PTSD and spousal abuse. But in the end, she decided not to, after conferring with her attorneys for almost an hour. The defense's only witness was Bree's brother, Eric. Eric said she'd been on the phone with Bree on that fateful September 8th, and that he'd nearly heard the shooting itself.
What exactly did you hear in terms of a physical altercation? Can you describe it?
I heard things banging. I heard my nieces and nephews crying and yelling. I heard my sister saying she was being hit. I heard Colin yelling, and I heard, I wouldn't know how to describe it, things hitting the ground or things being hit, like bumped or something, like slams.
So things are being hit, and she's telling you Colin is hitting her, is that correct? You don't know what's going on. Obviously, you can't see what's going on, can you?
Eric had only heard the altercation. He hadn't seen it. He relied on what his sister was telling him.
Did Bree ever mention a gun to you?
I believe right at the end she said she was getting a gun to protect the kids, and I said, "Just leave." And I said he wouldn't hurt them. She said he would kill them, and that is when the call ended, when she shot him.
However, Eric hadn't mentioned the gun in his previous interviews with the police. The prosecution picked up on this discrepancy, which was enough to discredit his testimony in the eyes of the jury, and Bree's fate was sealed. After 4 hours of deliberation, Bree Kuhn was found guilty of first-degree murder. They found that it had been a conscious decision to kill her husband, not self-defense. She'd shot him in the back because he was threatening to take her kids away. This was murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, the legal mandatory minimum for this charge. Her daughter now lives with Bree's ex, the daughter's father, and Colin and Bree's kids continue to grow up without their parents. Could the police have intervened earlier? Could this horrible outcome have been prevented? We'll never know.